Hi everybody, welcome back to Reading Sisters, and today we will be reading Rest in Power, The Enduring Life of Trayvon Martin, Part 2. Now, last video we read Part 1 of this book, and if you haven't watched it yet, I would recommend watching it before you watch this video. So, let's get into it. And we've started a new thing. Every time we post a video, there will always be this in the background saying what we are reading, just in case you didn't catch the title. So, let's start. We left off at the introduction, and today we're going to be reading Chapter 1. Sabrina, Our Lives Before. Who was Trayvon Martin? I've been asked that question a million times since his death. In death, Trayvon Martin became a maitre and a symbol of racial injustice. A name and a face on t-shirts, posters, and protest signs. When he was alive, of course, he was none of those things. He was simply a boy growing into a young man, with all of the wonder and promise and struggle that journey entails. What else was he? He was loved. Trayvon had struggles academically, even behaviorally at times, but he loved his friends and family, sports, music, and his dreams of flight. And he saw that love returned and those dreams coming within his reach. In other words, he was a boy. And because he was mine, he was, along with his brother, one of the most important and cherished boys in the world. His story begins with my own. My mother named me Sabrina with a Y. When I was born, Sabrina was an A. It was a very common name. I wanted her name to be different, my mother said, and so it was Sabrina. And if our given birth name is an indication of our destinies, then for the beginning I was blessed and cursed to stand out. I was born in Miami, but we soon moved to Opa-locka, which was a working-class Miami suburb. My mother worked at the post office as a clerk. My birth father was a longshoreman who died young from a heart failure in 1978. When I was 11, my mom remarried to a police officer who worked on the streets of Miami. I was a flower girl at my mother's wedding, dressed in a flowing ivory gown, hair styled up in a bun and happy. My stepdad was a powerful, strict, and taciturn presence in our house. We lovingly called him Dad. I was the baby, the youngest of 6 children with 2 brothers, who always looked out for me, an older sister and 2 stepsisters. We weren't rich, but my parents made sure we were all well provided for. We never had to worry about our electricity being turned off, or not having a place to stay or a car to drive. We had big Christmases, went on summer vacations, and always attended church on Sundays. We were taught the importance of work. My parents had good jobs and high expectations, and they expected me to get a good job too. Nobody gave anything to me. I had to earn and work for everything I wanted. We lived in a predominantly black neighborhood, although within the neighborhood there was a blend of different nationalities: Cuban, Jamaican, Bahamian, and Haitian. Back then, in the 1970s, Opa-locka was a paradise. Children played everywhere, in the candy and a corner store where we would get sodas and chips. Early proper way of doing things. As soon as I came home from school, I had to change into my play clothes, and before I was allowed to go out and play, I had to clean up and do my homework. Then and only then I would be allowed to go outside. We played tag and run up and down the street. Even then, my dad, the disciplinary policeman, gave us our perimeters. We had to stay within the 2 stop signs on the street. Opa-locka was changing during the 1970s, like a lot of America at the time, suffering from an influx of drugs and escalation of street violence. Despite that, my mom and dad created a loving and safe environment for us. We went on What went on outside our door was different, separate, foreign. These were all problems raging out there, but we didn't see or feel for them. We were protected. I never saw the violence. I never saw drugs. By the time I was in my teens, my dad had become a detective. He didn't bring the energy of his job home. He was always polite with us, but still very strict. I had a curfew. People couldn't just walk through our home. Sometimes I'd go to other people's homes and their parents would allow the children's friends to walk all over the place. My friends had to be in the same room where I was if I was in the den. They had to be in the den. And of course, I wasn't allowed to start dating until I was 16. I felt comfortable in the easy flow of an ordinary rhythm of our humble community. But the truth is, I didn't want to be like everybody around me. From a young age, I craved something different, and for me, education was the path to less ordinary life. In middle school, I pursued a series of passions, always backed by my parents. I took classes for acting, etiquette, and modeling, and even learned to play the piano and clarinet. And I also ran track. Even learned I also ran track. When I graduated from high school, there was no question that I would attend college. My dream was to go to school in Tallahassee, where I had friends, until my older cousin told my mother that everybody went there, so she decided that I needed something different. I'm not sending money or my daughter there, my mother said. Sabrina, pick another school. I flipped through a book of colleges and almost at random settled on Grambling State University, Grambling, Louisiana, a place I had never visited, where I knew no one, and that honestly I knew nothing about. I just picked it because I wanted to get away from Miami, do my own thing, be my own person, and follow my own impulse. To do something different. I had been away from home before with my parents, other than to attend summer camp. My mother, impressed with my determination, approved. My mom, my aunt Lena, and my brother Mark drove me to Grambling. When we arrived, I checked into the freshman dorm and got my room key. My family and I went upstairs to standard dorm room, two beds, two desks, and my mom with my aunt and my brother helped me move in. We cleaned up everything, made up my bed, plugged in the clock, unpacked my clothes, and hung them in the closet. It was time to say goodbye. We all hugged, and Mama kept up a patter of encouraging talks as she slowly moved toward the door. Sabrina, you'll be fine. You're going to do great. You always liked to do things on your own. You always did like to be adventurous. This is awesome, and I am so proud of you, she said at last, as they were leaving. I walked out after them down the sidewalk and watched their car start to pull out. When suddenly it all hit me at once, like a big wave. This wasn't good thing. In fact, it was the worst thing in the world. I started sniffling, then crying, then booing, then screaming, making all this horrible noise in front of the freshman dorm. I don't know where it all came from, but soon I was screaming so loud that my family could hear from their car, and they turned around and drove back to where I stood. My mother popped open the door and came over to me. Sabrina, what's wrong with you? My mother asked. I felt like a puppy that had been left alone in the woods. I looked at her with pitiful eyes. Sabrina, look at all these people staring at you, my mother said, gesturing to the students and parents now watching at us. I don't care. I don't know these people, I said, getting back into the car with them, ready to drive away from Grambling forever and go back home. Instead, they took me to Captain D's, a fast food seafood restaurant, for lunch. Oh my God, I cannot believe you are doing this, my mother said, because I'd always been strong. But in that moment, I realized how much family really meant to me. Not just the idea, but the physical presence of family, the closeness, the way that people you love can create a kind of soft, gentle barrier around you that makes everything seem easier. When my family left me alone in that strange place, that lonely place, I felt a child, a sense of isolation I'd never known before. After a while, I calmed down and slowly went back into a dorm. A year and a half later, I was still homesick, and when I came home for Christmas break, I never went back. I enrolled in the University of Miami for one expensive semester before transferring to what they called Florida Memorial College, where I majored in English with a minor in communications. My ambition was a career in television, either as a reporter or someone who worked behind the scenes. But when I interned at a Miami television and radio station, Channel 10 and 99 Jams, everyone told me, "You're going to have to leave Miami to go to one of the smaller markets to get more experience. I thought about it, but worried. Maybe this is going to be just like gambling, homesick all over again. I decided I want to remain close to home. In 1989, I left college to do what I had always done, go to work. My first full-time job was working for Miami-Dade County as a console security specialist. I sat at a desk that faced a wall of small TV monitors, 50 in all, each connected to a closed circuit camera around the county. I was also given 7 different two-way radios that connected to me to various nearby security companies. My job was to monitor the cameras and alert the security companies by radio whenever I saw something suspicious or whenever an alarm went off, so I kept an eye out for anything I thought might be suspicious. Never targeting a demographic category, I learned how to size people up rather quickly without having to resort to simplistic profiling. It was ju- a job in security, I suppose, except it wasn't dangerous. Occasionally, there would be a minor break in or other petty crime to report, but mostly my shift included homeless people sleeping where they shouldn't, vandalism, and cats and dogs triggering false alarms. It was a good it was a good, solid job. I was in my 20s. I was dating and had been proposed to twice. I felt like I was at the beginning of something, the start, maybe to a life that worked, surrounded still by the family I loved in my hometown. So, it wasn't love at first sight, but Trayvon Martin grew on me. I met him at the Miami-Dade County Solid Waste Management Christmas party in 1993. I was still working for the county, but had been promoted to code enforcement officer, writing tickets for violations, mostly to people dumping trash in front of their homes. It wasn't a glamorous job, but it offered stability. I was still good at quickly sizing people up. But when Tracy's brother Mike, who had worked as a truck driver for the county, brought Tracy over to meet me, he wasn't easy to size up or understand. Tracy was very tall, thin, and really lean. When he said, "How you doing, Sabrina?" His baritone voice was inflected with the thick accent from a faraway place. Well, not that far away. He told me he was born in Miami but raised in East St. Louis. But it wasn't his voice that drew me in. We seemed to click from the start. He was friendly and funny, and I just felt somehow, although I still can't figure out why, I just felt we had met before. He asked me out a few weeks later. Everything about Tracy Martin was different. He was hilarious and gentle, but also bold and self confident. His already impressive height was topped by a high top fade. I liked him and came to love him enough to say yes when he proposed. We were both 27. On June 11th, 1994, we were married in a big Miami wedding filled with friends and family at a banquet hall. We moved into a small two-bedroom apartment in the beginning. It was Tracy, my son, Javaris, then an active and intelligent 4-year-old bundle of joy, and me beginning a new life of hard work, faith, and family. So, we are going to finish page 9 and then that'll be it for today. Our baby Trayvon was born the following year on February 5th, 1995. My mom and Tracy's mom were with Tracy and me in the delivery room. I wasn't asleep, just relaxed from the anesthesia, and in that state I remembered the prediction of a physicist, psychist, I don't know, I had visited some years before. I had gone with a friend thinking I'd only wait for her while the physicist performed her reading. When we got there, the physician looked at me, and even though I was at the back of the line of the people outside, she took me by the hand and said, "I'll read you first." She was a middle-aged Puerto Rican woman wearing a bright-colored dress covering in gold beads, and she led me into her reading room. She began shuffling tarot cards and then placed them down on the table. She then, oh, psychic, sorry. She took my hand in hers and started peering down my palm. She told me she could see my future clearly. You're a strong person, ambitious, very spiritual, and you will live a long time. You care about people, like to help people. As for children, you'll only have boys, never girls. I wasn't sure I believed in fortune tellers, but I sensed that what she was saying was true and felt a quick surge of mixed emotions. I'd always been close to little boys. Everybody in our community seemed to do so much for the little girls, teaching them, keeping them safe. I felt that boys needed someone on their side too. But of course, I had always known that black and brown boys had a harder struggle ahead of them. Not only was the temptation of drugs and crime, but just to get the basic things that should have been theirs by right, education and employment. So I was always there for my two brothers and my male cousins and nephews. And now I promised myself that I'd always be there for my son, Javaris, and also the baby that was now pushing to escape my womb and come out into the world. Trayvon came out screaming. After they cleaned him off and wrapped him in a blanket, the nurse laid him on my chest, and I thanked God for this miracle, this ultimate blessing. I could feel his heart beating so fast, right alongside mine, so close that it made me cry. Then and there, I made a promise to do my best for this child as a mother, an example counselor, and a friend. From the beginning, Trayvon was a playful child. We called him Crazy Legs at one point because his legs were so long, just like his dad's. As soon as he could crawl, those legs were moving, and little Trayvon was trying to escape that two-bedroom Miami apartment. He was always on the go. He would bother everything, and sometimes I'd make him sit down and watch TV just to keep him still. He loved cartoons, was glued to them. Ninja Turtles, Batman, Superman, Barney, and most of all, Winnie the Pooh, which he watched so much that we exchanged Crazy Legs for Pooh as his nickname, and even dressed him in a Winnie the Pooh for Halloween 2 years in a row. By 1997, I had returned to the Florida Memorial University to complete my degree. Trayvon was 2 and Javaris was 6, two little boys I dressed in identical clothing, always sitting side by side under my chair or on my lap while I was studying in the university library or at home. I took them everywhere with me because Tracy was always working from early on. I impressed on them the importance of excelling. I graduated from high school and college, and you have to not only do what I did, you have to exceed what I did. I would tell them because each generation has to do a little bit better than the last generation. When Trayvon was 5, Tracy and I split up, but agreed to share custody. Trayvon and Javaris would spend weekdays with me, and then Tracy would have them on weekends, picking them up at the house on Friday afternoon and bringing them back either Sunday night or Monday morning. It wasn't always easy, but we stayed close. So that is going to be all for the video today. Um, if you want to hear more, please make sure to like and subscribe and hit that notification bell for the next time we post a video on the enduring life of Trayvon Martin, Rest in Power, a parent story of love and justice and birth of a movement. So, and also, please comment in the description what books you would like to have us read next.